All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode, I believe, 333 of the Restoring Rapport podcast. I actually am having a hard time remembering what number on because it's been so many, but I think that's the number. This is a podcast for young believers who are pursuing the goal of marriage and family and looking to get married as young as possible in a healthy way. I'm your host, Seth Hensley. I come on twice a week, every week, on Thursday and Sunday to discuss not only the benefits of getting married young, but I try to equip and encourage you in your pursuit of that goal. And today we are going to be reviewing an article by Brett McKay and Kate McKay entitled Look Before You Leap, Questions to Ask to Avoid Falling in Love with the Wrong Person. And this is done for the Art of Manliness podcast. Brett McKay has done over 1,000 articles and I believe podcast episodes on different issues relating to how to be a man and some good ways to be a good man, because those are few and far between nowadays, and you want to be one of them, not only to find a spouse and for the benefit of your future children, but because it's what God has called you to do. And I'm talking to you particularly as young believers today, because that's who this show is for. If you're not a young believer, the show is probably not for you. You're probably not going to get much value out of it, but anyway, I'm really excited to get into this today. It was published on February 10th of 2025, so pretty recent. This is being recorded on March the 4th, I think. Yeah, it is March the 4th because Daredevil, the new season of Daredevil is coming out. And man, I am pumped about this. Daredevil is one of the few, this is a sidetrack on Daredevil, superheroes who has an extremely Christian worldview behind the hero. He is not only a Catholic in the actual Marvel universe, but he is a very interesting character because he is a lawyer who also doubles as a vigilante. So he has this weird dichotomy going between, whether or not he believes the law works in bringing criminals to justice and what part he plays as a gifted and talented man in God's plan to bring justice. And so it's just a very, very interesting show. It does have a little bit of violence in it. So if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, actually not a little bit, it's pretty graphic in nature. So if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, again, I really don't like violence. And so I just tend to skip over that stuff. If I see something coming, I either look away or fast forward or something. But the content of Daredevil is just so intricate and really fascinating to me. What role does man play in God's justice? That's a very hard question to answer. What role does the law play in God's justice and God bringing, in the hand of God working, bringing together good for those who love him and who are called according to his purpose? Protecting his children infinitely more than he protects the sparrows is probably how Jesus would say. But it's what role do you have in that as a man? And I think Daredevil really explores that. So I'm excited to watch the new season. But yeah, let's get back into the article. It says, look before you leap, questions to ask to avoid falling in love with the wrong person. Again, it's written by Brett McKay. He says, your friends saw the red flags. Your family voiced their concerns, but you were so caught up in the excitement of new love that you missed all the warning signs. Now you're stuck in a relationship that's making you absolutely miserable. Sheesh. Now, why does this happen? He says, according to researchers at University College London, feelings of love lead to suppression of activity in the areas of the brain controlling critical thought. In other words, love can not only make you blind, but stupid. He says, so how can you keep your brain switched on while dating and dodge potential bullets in the realm of romance? According to a relationship expert, Dr. John Van Epp, author of How to Avoid Falling in Love with a Jerk. Interesting. I bet a lot of women read that. It's about using both your head and your heart by taking the time to understand your partner's faces, FACES, and it's an acronym here that he says are 5 key areas you should know about someone before making romantic commitments. Let me give you the ones that I definitely think are important, based on not only my personal experience, but a lot of the authors, marriage therapists, and mentors that I have listened to out there on how to have a healthy marriage. Number 1, you need to know your partner can stick around. And you need to know your partner is as committed, as invested, and as attracted to you as you are to them. Because what's going to happen if you don't make sure of that is you potentially could find yourself in a situation where you're extremely emotionally invested in the success of this relationship and the other person is not, and therefore is bailing and leaving you in the lurch, okay? That is a serious situation that you do not want to find yourself in. And so being as confident in your partner's ability to stick around as you are in your own is an extremely important thing to know. Your partner's religious beliefs, extremely important to know. Again, like Jesus would say, you need to be equally yoked. That's just an extremely important concept that all Christians will tell you is extremely pivotal thing to get out of the way before you enter a committed romantic relationship. And again, maybe you're the kind of the casual dater that doesn't listen to this show much, because I don't really think that's a good idea. So you're not going to get much value out of this if you're, somebody who just treats dating like a fun little outing, without much purpose, and doesn't really treat it like a serious thing, doesn't take it seriously. You're probably not going to get much out of the show. So, but if you are one of those people, I'm sure there's lots of shows out there for you. He says, over the decades of clinical experience working with couples as well as decades of research, Von Epp found that there are 5 areas represented by the acronym FACES that people should know about each other before making romantic commitments. Number 1, family dynamics and background. I think that one is important, because, you've heard it said that you're not just marrying the person you're marrying, you're also marrying the family. And that is true, but I think more particularly, Seth Studley is a marriage family therapist licensed that I have interviewed on this podcast. If you want to go back and check out that episode, it's one of our early episodes, probably from 10 to 19. It's somewhere in there, but it says Seth Studley licensed LMFT, and basically he talks about family of origin and what that means, and how that impacts your marriage. And what that means is, everyone has a family of origin. That just means you were raised a certain way with certain rules in a certain environment where certain things were done when difficulties approached and came up, and your partner was not raised that way. And so whenever difficulties come up in your marriage, you're going to default to handling those difficulties and problems and conflicts in the way that you were raised to handle them, and your partner is going to do the same. And oftentimes you and your partner were raised in very different homes with very different ways of dealing with conflict and problems. And so you could get into some conflict, with your partner because of how your partner is handling conflicts and problems in your marriage. And so I think that family does play it. Yeah, you need to know where your partner's family is coming from on this. Number 2, he says attitudes and action of a mature conscience. This is big. You want to know that your partner has a conscience, and not just a conscience, but I would say a intense passion and desire to follow God's law. So whatever Scripture says and whatever the Holy Spirit has communicated to mankind throughout the centuries of human history, your partner needs to be passionate about. It doesn't need to be just oh yeah, I go to church. Oh yeah, I do this. I'm a spiritual person is a thing that people will throw out there. Or they need to have an intense and unyielding conviction. They need to be a man or woman of conviction and an intense and unyielding relationship with God. And by that I mean God the Father, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. Because again, if you don't have that, your marriage not only could be aimless in any sense of meaning, but also you could be unequally yoked. You could be pulling in different directions. And frankly, people who don't have a conscience really disturb and alarm me. And I really find them kind of fascinating. Not fascinating in the sense that a lot of people do, like serial killers and all that, people who have literally no empathy and conscience, and they're just sort of uncontrollable because they have no conscience. That is fascinating to some people, but what's fascinating to me is that how do you get to a place where you lose that? Not the people who are born without it or whatever. I don't really know what to think of them. Or maybe you're not, it's kind of that whole nature versus nurture debate. Like, I don't know how much and to what extent people are born without or lose a conscience. I tend to think they lose it. I don't think anybody's born without it, but through a series of decisions or things that they're exposed to early in life, they lose that conscience by over a period of time. It's typically what I think when it comes to this, but yeah, you're going to want your partner to be the person of firm moral conviction for the sake of your future family. Number 3, it says compatibility potential. I don't place a lot of weight on this one personally because I think that just about everybody is compatible, because I place a lot of emphasis on choice instead of just, whether or not something you have the luck to make something work out. Like, I think if you married somebody, you can make it work out. I really do think that. Now, I know that there are exceptions to this rule and all kinds of weird things that happen to people and have happened to people, but I really do think that you have more power than you think, and you're not victim to luck or chance or fortune when it comes to the success of your marriage. I mean, I really do think that even if things feel stacked against you, that you can overcome whatever problem with your partner. And so don't give up hope there or absolve yourself of personal responsibility for your nuptial success by saying things like, we're not compatible, so we're getting a divorce. I don't think that's I don't think that's an acceptable excuse to dissolve a union. I think that what God has joined together, no man should separate, and that you need to basically take the steps to fix your marriage, and you can take those steps, and you have the power to take those steps if you are willing to follow the direction of God and God's will for your life. Number 4, he says examples of previous friendship or relationship patterns. This one I think probably might be the biggest. You know, I heard someone say, I forget who it was, probably Jordan Peterson, that the biggest predictor of someone's future is their past history in a specific area. And I think that really shouts true in relationships, particularly. If someone has a bad dating history, a history of leaving their partner, a history of abuse for their previous partners, a history of infidelity with their previous partners, those people are showing to you, in all likelihood, and I know people can change and all that, but whatever, they're showing you a pattern of behavior that will likely show itself in their future, okay? And so you need to be totally informed and aware of who your partner has dated in the past, how the relationships ended, why the relationships ended. All of this information needs to be completely and transparently made clear for the person that you are potentially entering this committed relationship with, because that is an extremely important thing to know about the person you are spending the rest of your life with. You want to know how they've conducted relationships in the past, because again, that's what you're about to enter into with them. So again, someone's history is your best indication of what they'll probably do in their future. Okay, so definitely know that. That's extremely important. Number 5, he says, is skills for relationship. And so you're going to need to know everything you need to know about someone's skills for relationship before you start dating them. I think this is also true. Again, a lot of times this will happen through vulnerability and just conversation. And I'm kind of scoffed at a little bit by some people, I think, for suggesting that it doesn't actually take a lot of time for you to know everything that you know about somebody in order to confidently enter a relationship with them. But I kind of stand by that, man. If you're having vulnerable and honest conversations about serious, deep things and not just fluff, then you can get to know somebody and know everything you need to know about them in order to get married in a healthy way fairly early in a relationship. It doesn't have to be this 2-year engagement or 2-year dating process. My wife and I met in September of 22. We went on our first date in December of 22, and less than 6 months after that, we were married. Okay, we did not even have a 6-month dating anniversary before we tied the knot, and I was extremely confident in my choice of a partner, and still am to this day, and will remain so until my body is cold in its grave, because I did the steps that you're supposed to do. I got the big issues that you're supposed to get out of the way before we started dating. Not once we became engaged, not once we got married, not once we started dating. I did and my wife did too, and we were very intentional about this because we'd had situations in the past where we were very unhappy with our partner's ability to commit. And so we took really conscious steps to get out of the way all the serious issues that could potentially end the relationship before we started dating and entered that level of serious commitment. And so that's what I would suggest you guys do. I do think that's important. But he's going to go into detail on these. So let's do that together. Family dynamics and background is the first one he says you need to understand about your partner before entering a relationship. He says family experiences strongly influence our attitudes and behaviors in romantic relationships. Gender role expectations, communication patterns, and approaches for dealing with conflict or stress are all shaped by experiences we had in our families of origin. So in the beginning of a relationship, ask someone about her family. As it gets more serious, meet her parents and other family members and observe the dynamics that exist between them. Pretty common sense. I think that is pretty standard for romantic relationships nowadays. Usually, in my experience, the man would, after going on 1 or 2 dates with a woman, well, really, I'm not even going to put a number on it. After having gone on dates with a woman, if he decides that he wants to enter a committed relationship with that woman, he needs to meet her parents and explain his intentions, not only very clearly to the woman in front of witnesses, but also to the parents of this woman. And so that basically he can be held accountable, and that his intentions have been made clear, so that there's a level of accountability there, so that if he goes back on his intentions, his character is called into question because he told them otherwise. And that's really what needs to be there, I think, in order for that woman to be able to enter that relationship with a confident and calm mind. Because hearts are involved in relationships. And so, he says, just because a dynamic exists in her family doesn't mean she's bound to repeat it. While patterns do tend to carry over from generation to generation, sometimes the apple does, in fact, fall very far from the tree. But seeing a dynamic in her family may help you recognize it in her behavior and can simply prompt revealing conversations as to what she wants out of life and how she imagines her future family. As you're figuring out the dynamics that exist in someone's family, explore questions like, what's the state of her parents' marriage? Even if they're still married, are they happily married? Did both her parents work, or did one stay home with the kids? What was her parents' parenting style? How did her parents split household tasks and childcare responsibilities? How were finances handled between her parents? What was her relationship like with her father or mother? Is her family affectionate or more standoffish? If she has siblings, does she get along with them? Does she stay in touch with them? Why or why not? What was her extended family highly involved in her life? What traditions were important in her family growing up? Does she want to continue them? Has there ever been any family cutoffs or estrangements? What was the mood or atmosphere of her home growing up? Were there any addictions in the family? How similar or dissimilar are your families? Does she like to spend time with her family? Does her family like to spend time with her? All good questions. I do think that it's important to consider those things. Again, not so much as a make or break issue for the marriage itself, because I do think that regardless of how you answer those questions, you should be able to confidently still say, yes, I want to marry this woman. Regardless of what the answer to those questions relating to her family are, because I don't think you should marry somebody just because of their family. But still, I think those are good things to ask to make your transition into the marriage season smoother. He also goes on here to talk about how attitudes and actions of a mature conscience are important to understand about your partner before you get married. So let's go ahead and dive into that. So he says, this is all about figuring out if the person you're dating is a healthy, mature adult, unlike the family-related questions above, which are more neutrally exploratory. These are questions where you're looking for a certain kind of answer, one that indicates person you're dating is more mature rather than less. Number one, does she have a personal code or set of principles? What is her sense of right and wrong, and where does it come from? Does she make wise and kind choices, or just consider her own needs and wants? Does she show that she has a sense of her words and actions affecting others? Does she try to see the perspectives of others? How does she handle stress and setbacks? Is she resilient? How does she handle being wrong? Does she get defensive, or is she open to feedback? How stable versus moody is she? Is she impulsive? Is she neurotic? Does she respect boundaries? Does she take the initiative or wait until someone tells her to do something to take action? Does she set goals for herself and work to achieve them? The ones that stood out to me there are does she have a personal code or set of principles? Obviously, as a show for young believers, I'm encouraging you to live according to the words of Jesus. So not being unequally yoked with an unbeliever or somebody who has a totally different sense of morality than the one that Jesus taught. So obviously, I would tell you need to be aligned there, but again, those issues are things you can get out of the way relatively quickly. I think if you're actually having the right conversations, you don't have to date somebody for 3 years to know what their stance on all the big issues is. You can, again, just ask them early and see how they're living early in the relationship, and you can kind of figure out where their views are on all the important issues, I believe. Because again, that's what my wife did and I did. We didn't even have a 6-month dating anniversary. I knew all the answers to the big questions about my wife's worldview very early in the relationship, like months into the relationship. I was aware of all the big issues. And again, the only thing you have to do to make sure that happens is be intentional about the kind of conversations you're having. Instead of just talking about sort of fluff, you need to talk about the things that, again, are going to impact your future marriage. So I agree with him there. C in phases is compatibility potential, according to Van Epp. He says the strongest relationships have both similarities and differences. What matters most is alignment on the big things, values, life goals, lifestyle preferences, and especially around family, religion, and money. While you don't need to have identical interests, sharing some leisure activities strengthens bonds too. And when differences exist, like the one partner being more spontaneous, the other more organized, they should complement rather than clash. The key is finding someone different enough to help you grow, but similar enough to build on a stable, harmonious life together. I mean, I agree with this, but again, don't place too much emphasis. If you would take my advice, don't place too much emphasis on the big compatibility word, because I think you really can make things work even if it's not easy. And that's why marriage is a beautiful thing, is it's designed to mature you, even if, it's not going to be easy. I'm not saying that. I mean, you can make it easier on yourself by making good decisions, but it is, in the end, marriage is still going to mature you, and that is not comfortable. And so I wouldn't place too much emphasis on the compatibility statement, because again, nobody is essentially 100% compatible. There's still going to be some maturity demanded on both sides of the union. He says, here are some questions for you to explore as you figure out your compatibility potential. The more questions you can say yes to, the more likely you are to be a good match. Do you share the same values? Again, that's a big one. So yeah, obviously be compatible on that. But again, when it comes to the smaller, like, personality stuff, like, I wouldn't place too much emphasis on that. She just needs to be able to answer the big questions, right? Let me just tell you what I was looking for in my wife. I wanted to make sure that she was a follower of Jesus and had an earnest relationship with Jesus Christ. I wanted to make sure that I was attracted to her. I wanted to make sure that she was attracted to me. I wanted to make sure that she was a physical touch love language and not exhausted or worn out by, physical contact, because that's something that was very important to me. And she actually added that last box. And I wasn't even aware that I had that until I met her, but I did, and I quickly discovered through interacting with her that was something that was important to me. And also the final box is that she was moving towards the goal of marriage and family, and willing to have children and commit to me for the rest of her life, and I knew she would never leave. Those are the big boxes that I wanted to make sure she had, and I would suggest those to you. Again, just to recap them, I wanted to make sure that she was a follower of Jesus Christ. She had to be super attracted to me, as attracted to me as I was attracted to her. So we both had to be attracted to each other, basically. I had to know that she was capable of sticking around and never leaving. And then the last one, number 5, that she was actually moving towards the goal of marriage and having children. And so those are the big ones that I would throw out there. Obviously, some people have more, but I think when you get into creating too many boxes that somebody has to check in order for you to consider them as a marriage prospect, you can actually limit yourself and miss some good opportunities that God is actually sending your way because you were unwilling to yield on things that were not make or break issues. And so just be aware of that balance too. He says, do you share the same religious beliefs? Again, big issue. Do you share similar political positions? This one's kind of dicey, because the way I look at this is your political position, at least mine, is informed by my religious beliefs. And so I don't really think the political arena itself is something that you have to agree with your spouse on. But I think that if you disagree on the issues of politics that are, that have something to be, that are linked, I should say, to religious issues, then that might be an issue. But as far as actual political parties and stuff, I don't think we should owe allegiance to those anyway as followers of Jesus, because we're called to follow Christ and not men. And so just keep that in mind. It says, are your long-term goals compatible? Again, like, I don't know. I guess the marriage and family thing kind of, but obviously she should probably have the same. I don't know. I guess that one could be serious. He says, do you have similar ideas on how many kids you want? Again, that's one of the ones I threw out. He said, do you have similar ideas on family roles? That's big. Do you share a sense of humor, similar sense of humor? I don't really think that matters at all. I don't think the sense of humor matters at all. Lainey and I don't really have the same sense of humor, but it doesn't really impact our marriage. We still find lots of time to laugh together, and I don't think that you have to have the same sense of humor to get married, or even should necessarily. It says, do you have similar ideas about how to spend and save money? That one kind of actually ties into the goals one, because if you have the same goals, then you're kind of saving and working together towards the same end anyway. So it doesn't really matter how you spend and save money, because if you want the same things, you're going to be working towards the same goals. And so that necessitates saving money for the same thing. So I don't know. But I guess that could be a big issue for, at least in mine and Lainey's case, that's not as much a big issue, because we're both saving towards the same goal, a house to raise our family in. And so owning a house, I should say, to raise our family in. And so I don't know.
Anyway, it says, do you have hobbies or activities that you share in common? I do think you need to be able to spend time together, and I think you need to make it easy for yourself to spend time together. But I don't think that is, something that you necessarily have to have in order to create a happy marriage. I don't think you have to share the same hobbies. You can find new hobbies that you both are interested in and then do this together. It says, do you have a similar level of interest in travel? I don't really think that's a big deal. Again, that's a secondary issue. I don't think it's something that you need to make sure your partner answers yes to in order to move towards the goal of marriage with them. He says, do you have a similar level of interest in health and fitness? I do think that you should obviously want to pursue a spouse who is healthy and who's not going to die early in life and who's capable of raising children and taking care of themselves. So that would be something to consider. It says, do you have similar energy levels? I don't think that matters as much. I mean, I guess you are going to want to be able to talk to each other. So if one of you's tired more than the other due to work or other situations or circumstances, you're going to be able to need to solve that. But I don't think energy levels, just that, is something worth declining a relationship with a really good choice on because he or she does not have good, matching energy levels with you or whatever. I don't think that's just too vague. Like, what do you mean by that? Do you have a similar inclination towards socializing? So like introvert, extrovert people. I don't really think that matters. I think the more like you are, it will be easier for you to transition into marriage and have a healthy marriage, but I don't think it's impossible to do it if you're different than your person when it comes to your desire to socialize. It says, do you desire a similar level of physical affection? That one I do actually think is big because I think a lot of times what tears marriages apart is people are not actually physically connected enough. And I don't just mean in a sexual sense. I mean in any sort of physical affection. I think that's lacking. Either one partner or the other is not, what's the word? For whatever reason, I'm not even going to say is not, whatever. For whatever reason, physical affection is not taking a priority in the marriage. And because of that, you have couples who are disconnected all the time because they haven't reconnected through some physical contact. And so for Lainey and I, that's just extremely important. It's really hard to become on opposite teams with your partner if you're cuddling with them a lot. And so I think that one is definitely super important. So take that into consideration. And again, that was one of my big boxes. Is this person able to, is this person energized and enlivened and strengthened by physical contact, or are they, for whatever reason, opposed to that? Because that would be a big red flag to me, because again, that's how couples reconnect, especially if there's been a stress or a problem in the marriage. That's how you get away from the problems and focus on your connection. E is for examples of previous friendship or relationship patterns. How we act in one relationship, he says, typically demonstrates how we'll show up in others. That is true. Okay, so again, I said sort of at the first part of this video that the biggest indicator of a person's future in relationship is their past history of relationships. So if you have a partner who has a habitual pattern of breaking up with his or her partners, romantic partners, then that's probably going to, show you what their level of commitment is for you and your romantic relationship. So just keep that in consideration. Again, not that if somebody's broken up with somebody before, you shouldn't date them, but you just need to know why. You need to know why. And if there's a large pattern of this person breaking up with people for no good reason at all, then I would pass on that really quickly, because that shows you that they're willing to drop everything, and shatter the intimate relationship for really no reason at all. Just kind of a whim that they got. Or a change in their feelings or whatever, which tells you that they're an unstable person when it comes to how they feel. Like they can't stay feeling the same for a long period of time. They can't control how they feel by making good decisions. They're basically just subject to how they're feeling, and how they're feeling is subject to just chance, really. And so, yeah, that's a very dangerous person to get close to in any context, because you never know if they're going to stick around or not. In fact, the odds are that they actually won't stick around, because things are going to happen in life, man, that are hard. And if somebody's just bailing, I mean, that tells you where they're at. He says, here are some questions to explore as you figure out the person you're dating exhibits healthy. If the person you're dating exhibits healthy relationship patterns, how does she treat service people? I've heard this one before. It says, how does she treat service people, restaurant servers, cashiers, attendants, and so on? I've heard that one before. and specifically in context to how men treat waitresses and stuff. Does she have road rage? Gosh, how is she getting along with people at work? How does she treat subordinates, her boss? Has she been fired from her job before? Does she have close friends? How does she treat them? Do you like her friends? Does she gossip about others and criticize them behind their backs? Does she date others seriously before you? How did those relationships end and why? Were the breakups acrimonious? I think all of these are actually really good questions because these questions show character. Okay, so how someone treats other people that they have nothing to gain from shows character. How this person handles anger shows the state of their character. How this person handles their relationships at work shows character. How this person handles gossip shows character. How this person has handled past friendships and past relationships, like we just covered, shows the condition of their character. And all those are big things that I do think you need to know about somebody. So I really like this section so far of the thing. Again, the personality stuff, I'm not as big on because it's like, is your goal to make it easy for your personalities to get along? Or is your goal to be close to your spouse? Because if your goal is to be close to your spouse, you can get over the hardship of overcoming personality differences. If your ultimate goal in the marriage is to have an easy time of it, then I would say that's immature and you don't need to be getting married anyway. And so the personality thing doesn't really matter. I don't think you need to marry or not marry somebody based on a personality difference, but these character things, I think these are a bigger deal. And then the questions I gave you at the start of the 5 points I gave you at the start of this part 2 of this episode are kind of the big things that you really want to be aligned on, or it's not going to go well. It says skills for relationships. Relationships are connected with the attitudes of a mature conscience. You're looking to see if your partner has the ability to navigate the ups and downs of a relationship maturely. Relationship skills include communication, conflict resolution, empathy, and emotional regulation. Look for the following when assessing your partner's relationship skills. When you're talking, does she pay attention to you or check her phone? Yeah, I guess all of these are bad things, but I don't think these are like I think that can be solved by communicating, hey, I don't feel like you're listening to me when you're on your phone. And then that person, because they care about you, should stop. Because if you're their highest priority, they're going to do whatever it takes to maintain connection with you, even if it means breaking a habit that they've had for years leading up to the marriage. She says, does she interrupt you when you're talking? When you speak with her, does she ask follow-up questions to ensure she fully understands you? Does she show compassion and genuine concern for others' feelings? Does she open up to you when you sense she's got something on her mind? Or does she clam up? When she has a problem, does she talk to you calmly, or is she able to blow up and get passive-aggressive? Does she stay composed when you have disagreements? Does she take responsibility for managing her emotions rather than blaming others? I do think that somebody who blames others is, again, a character issue all the time. If somebody is in a constant state of blaming other people for the problems of their life, that is a character flaw. He says, does she make compromises and seek win-win solutions? Does she apologize when she's wrong? Does she respect others' needs, time, and autonomy? By the way, all this applies for both men and women. He's writing to the men because his podcast is called Art of Manliness. So he's talking specifically to men who are looking to get married to a woman. And so, but all of this applies to women as well. If you're a woman who's looking to get married to a man, at literally every single issue that he's covered here might be a good question for you to know. It says, does she express gratitude? Does she lie? Again, character issues there, not personality issues. So I would say personality issues are tertiary. So I'd say there's like 3 tiers to this. So basically the top are those 5 things that I told you about earlier. Is she a follower of Jesus? Are you attracted to her? Is she attracted to you? Is she moving towards the goal of marriage and family? And do you know she can stick around? And I would kind of add the 6th one of, is physical contact actually a plus for her? And then the secondary issues I would say are like character issues. Like you're really going to want to, like, nobody's perfect. Again, I'm not saying that you should expect perfection, but you are going to want to know how your partner, what the state of your partner's character. So ask yourself those questions next. And then the tertiary issues are like personality things. And I really don't think those matter at all. I think they're very inconsequential when it comes to a marriage. I know they can make it harder or easier based on if your personalities are able to click better, but like I don't think that is a necessity. I think you can just work through those things relatively easily, like by by maturing. Like if your partner is bothered by some kind of personality trait you have, then you're going to need to compensate for that and adjust the way you're behaving in order to help your partner. That's like part of what marriage is. So just do it. He says, know someone through talk, togetherness, and time. There's a lot of stuff to learn about someone you're dating, and we just scratched the surface of what Van Epp talks about in that book there. It says, so what does this getting to know each other process actually look like? According to Van Epp, you get to know someone through talk, togetherness, and time. I would say the first two are bigger, again, because I married my wife without having a 6-month dating anniversary with her. And so I don't, and before that, we had only met once at church. So it was not like we had some big, profound, time hardened relationship coming into this dating process. We really were strangers in September of 22. We met each other in September of 22. And in December of 22, we started dating. And then we went on our first date. And then January 17th of 2023, we started dating officially. We entered a committed relationship with one another, moving towards the goal of marriage. And then we got married on July 13th, less than 6 months later, 4 days less than 6 months later. So, I don't think that time is necessarily a big one that you have to have with your partner here, because again, Lainey and I are in a very happy marriage right now, and we're going to keep it like that for the rest of our life. And that's a decision, not something that you just find yourself victim to. It's not like chance if your marriage works out or not. And that's an attitude that a lot of people sadly have. It's, are you making good decisions or are you not? If you're not making good decisions, your marriage won't last. If you are making good decisions, your marriage will last. So you totally do have personal responsibility in the outcome and happiness of your own, nuptial relationship. It says, as you're dating, ask thoughtful questions about your partner's life, values, and character. These conversations shouldn't feel like an interrogation, but it should emerge naturally as the relationship progresses. Overall, I've really agreed with his article so far here. He also says that we also don't reveal our real selves right away. That's a stereotype. That's a trend. That's not a law. Okay. Like I was very vulnerable and intentional about showing Lainey who I really was up front early in the relationship. Now, I was courteous and respectful, and I was putting on my best foot forward, so to speak, on the date. Yes, because first, impressions are important, but also showing her that I was able to work in order to be a considerate man that could take care of her for the rest of her life. And but I don't think that's like not showing my true self, because I can always make the choice to do that. And if I'm not making the choice to do that, then that's a character flaw. That's me basically saying I'm serving another goal other than serving my wife with more passion. And so, I think that, you don't really need to. I think it's totally possible to show your real self right away, as long as you make good decisions and have, like the important conversations. Like, you just don't, if you're dating to get married, you don't just show up to a date and talk about random stuff. You show up to a date and you talk about things that are make or break issues and big deals for the success of this future marriage. Okay. And so that's what my wife and I did. And we knew the big issues, and we knew each other's real self, as he would refer to it, right away. Because we were being honest and open and transparent and vulnerable. He says people are usually on their best behavior during early stages of relationship. Again, I don't think that should change. So it doesn't matter if they should be on their best behavior, yes, but that should never at any point change. Like, I don't think you have an excuse 3 years into your marriage to stop being on your best behavior and stop being courteous to your wife. Like, some people do that, but I think that's wrong. He says, so that someone's true patterns and behaviors don't manifest themselves for 3 or more months. Again, habits are malleable. It's not like you have to stick to the same habits. You just have to create new habits and cultivate those habits, those better habits, more than you cultivate the unhealthy habits that hurt your marriage. Because, and again, your habits should be guided by your ultimate goal. What's your telos? What's your vision? If your vision is a happy marriage, then all of your habits should be informed by that value. And so, I don't think this is a big make or break issue, because if your ultimate aim really is to get married and have a healthy relationship with your wife, then anything that gets in the way of that, even if it's a habit, will become eradicated. Because if your ultimate goal is getting married and having a healthy relationship, you're going to make new habits that support that goal. He says Van Epp encourages couples to take their time before escalating a relationship. Sheesh, that's a complicated sentence. I think if you know, you know, but I also think that you need to know your partner knows too. So again, just make sure your partner is matching you in investment, interest, and commitment level. And if they're not, don't progress into the relationship until they match you on those 3 big things. And that's the way to make sure the relationship goes the long haul. It's not complicated. You just need to make sure that your partner is as invested as you, or you are as invested as your partner. Because if you're not, don't go any further. Okay. Love needn't be blind or stupid. By taking the time to understand someone's faces, he says, you can make a clear-eyed choice about whether they're right for you. This doesn't mean finding someone perfect. I like that he points that out. He says we're all in works of progress, but in finding someone whose benefits, values, and character align with what you need as a partner. Remember, it's all about loving with your heart and your head. I agree with that last sentence. I think that's a great thesis sort of wrap up of his article, but I am confused about why he started throwing personality traits in there as ways of gauging whether or not you should enter a relationship aimed toward marriage with someone, because personality differences I don't think are relevant in that discussion. Now, they might make your marriage, again, easier to transition into, but again, if your ultimate intention and aim and goal and determination is to have a healthy relationship with your wife, then anything that gets in the way of that, you will get rid of, even if it's difficult. And so I don't think that's necessary, but overall, really good, interesting article. If you want to check out this article for yourself in the show notes, through the link in the show notes, I'll include it. You could just click on that article link there and read the article for yourself. I think I got through the whole thing, though. This is going to be a several part episode. So check that out, though, if you're interested. And thank you guys so much for listening today. If you enjoyed the content you heard in this episode, reach out and let me know what you thought of it through a Facebook or Instagram message, particularly voice memos, because I would like to play those on the show and kind of share your opinion with my listeners. So thanks for considering that. If the show ministered to you in any way, tell me what you thought of the episode, what you thought of the article, and specifically if you're on YouTube, answer this question in the comments right now. What are the what are the biggest issues you think you should take into consideration upon entering a committed romantic relationship? I would love to hear from you, and it would make me feel super connected to you guys as an audience. Listeners, and it would make this podcasting system two-way instead of a boring monologue. So thank you for considering that. Also follow the show on Instagram and Facebook if you're interested in the content we post there as well. So thank you guys so much for listening today, and I will talk to you next time.